Hello everybody, thank you for joining us this afternoon. I'm really looking forward to our masterclasses with Jane on personal branding masterclass. So, because I know it's such a struggle for a lot of learning and development professionals marketing their services and particularly focusing on their brand. And because you want, when clients are thinking about getting training in a particular area, being your area of expertise, whether it's leadership, customer service, change management, you want them to think of you. So branding is really important. And when we had a look at our research about what capabilities L&D professionals need now and in the future to be successful, marketing kept popping up. Marketing and consulting were some key new elements. So we've included that into our framework. So I want everyone, get your pens ready because there'll be lots of interesting and helpful tips from Jane this afternoon. But before we kick off the session, I'm going to hand over to Bill Gerard, who our ILP's COO, just to run through a couple of things that he's going to cover at the end of the session and then to introduce Jane. So thanks, Bill.
Thanks, Carrie, and welcome everyone. Yeah, we're changing the format of these sessions now just a little bit. So what we're going to be doing is Carrie will open us up as always, and then I'll just touch base on a few little things. We made a lot of changes to the website recently, and I'd like to encourage people to go back in and have a look at that and the Member Academy. But the other thing we did is I'm moving the discussion around capabilities or other things we're doing from the beginning of the meeting to the end of the meeting. So what we're going to do is get our guest presenters and facilitators on as early as possible, and then maybe take the last 15 minutes or 20 minutes of the session that we have to actually then work through something specific that's right for our members and things like that. So as an example, today I want to take us through the capability framework and look at one of the dimensions, business smarts. And so when Jane is finished and we're done with that, I encourage everyone to hang back and I'll take you through a little bit of that and we can have some discussion around those kind of things. So that's the format going forward as we move through this. So I hope everybody works with that in that process. Now let me open, and before I turn it over to Sally to introduce Jane to us, I was really excited when we had a number of different people talking about branding and talking about Jane Anderson at our member lounges and a few other things. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is a really important process. What's happening now as L&D is changing around the world is that we now have a significantly bigger access to the market than we've ever had before. It used to be people we used to know, referrals, things like that. Now the way people are working is we can actually get out to the entire world and take our messages to them. The challenge with that is so can every other learning and development professional. Therefore, we're also in a much more significantly competitive market than we've ever been in, which means to me things like differentiating yourself through certifications like the Certified Learning Designer, Certified Learning Facilitator, things like that, I think are going to give us a little bit of differentiation. The messages and the way in which we put our stuff together and how we build the business of our online business, if we're going to be moving to that, is going to be important. But nothing will be more important than I think than our branding, because we need to stand out. We need to be able to differentiate ourselves and stand on a world stage now. And I think that's really important. So I was delighted when Jane agreed to come along and take us through this session. And because everybody tells me that she is a phenomenon in this area. And on that note, I might turn it over to one of her mentors or mentees, I guess. And Sally, you'd like to talk a little bit about Jane and maybe introduce us and your experience with working with her.
Thanks, Bill. I appreciate that. Yes, I was raving about Jane at our last members lounge, and so hence now I'm introducing you to everyone. So what I said, and it's no secret, was that whatever Jane touches, it turns to gold. Now, Jane won't necessarily agree with that. Jane will tell you she usually goes first, tries to work it out, spends hours nutting it out, and then it turns to gold. So she goes first in a lot of ways, and that's where I think Jane is a true leader. The other thing I think is really important to know about Jane is that she is an influencer extraordinaire. She's the top 3 global gurus on branding. She has an amazing podcast called The Jane Anderson Show, and was able to interview Seth Godin absolutely gold interview, that one. She's worked with Virgin Australia, obviously pre-COVID, IKEA, Rio Tinto, Lego, all sorts of brands, you name it, Jane's been involved with it. And one of the things that I think that would help us particularly, and I'm not sure what Jane's going to cover, but Jane has been able to help over 500 influencers create $50 million worth of IP in 2 days. She knows how to help you get this stuff out of here and into something that's a piece of valuable IP in about 10 minutes. And Jane's been very influential for me in getting my books out and done. And I think when it comes to understanding strategic communications, when it comes to understanding content and content creation and being able to use that content in your marketing, and when it comes to branding, if Jane doesn't know it, it's not worth knowing. Jane, we are in for a blast. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sally, and hi everybody. Sally, you must be an MC or something. Like I don't know if you've thought about doing that, but you know, you're kind of good at it. So welcome everybody. Sally, thank you so much for the kind introduction. Sally and I have worked together and been wonderful friends for a long time. So I am grateful to be in the company of people who I love working with and who I actually call my friends. So some of you, I see lots of familiar faces on here. Some of you are currently in some of the programs we're delivering or have been victims of mine. I know Con has. And Monique's there. Hi, Monique. So welcome. It's wonderful to have so many of you on, and I'm really grateful to have you. And for those of you, if this is the first time we're meeting, then I am absolutely thrilled and grateful to connect with you. So we've got a short period of time today, so I want to give you as much as I possibly can, but I want to have a bit of fun because, hey, we're all from, our background's learning and development, and I don't know about you. Who's missing training rooms? All right, okay, so here we go. I've got a question for you. My question for you is, what I want you to do is I want you to share with me in the chat. I want you to share with me, pop in the chat, tell us something about yourself that sounds completely made up but is in fact 100% true. So pop it in. I'd love for you to pop it. You can pop it in the chat. So if you could tell us something about yourself that sounds completely made up, but is in fact 100% true. So just pop it in the chat area and let's have a look what comes through. I love this. Let's see, I've slept in many police station cells. I went to the West Bank by accident in a taxi. What else have we got here? I have 7 children. I have a motorbike. I fell off an earth ball and broke my nose. Years ago, I was mistaken for Sally Fields. I've been to more than 40 countries. I made a board game that was launched in New York by Ivana Trump. Holy moly, what an amazing list. I rescued a climber on Everest. Oh my God, drove through Mount Isa mine site and was escorted out by security. That's gold. What else have we? Oh my God, there's so much gold in here. What a great way to start the afternoon. I am in awe of all of you. And I have to see if there's anything else I've missed. I used to water ski for the Australian water ski team. Who's that? Pop your hand up. Who's that? That's Beck. Wow, I'm looking forward to a demonstration when we come out of COVID, thank you. And I delivered my own baby in Italy. Trevor, where are you, Trevor? I can't even see your hand up. I must be on the other screen. Oh, there you are. Wow, that's amazing. So welcome everyone. I've been on TV 3 times. Con, you are such a superstar. I am going to be asking for an autograph by the end of today. So I've just dobbed you in and you're going to be giving them out to everybody, okay? All right. Okay, so welcome everyone. I'm so thrilled to be here. As Sally said, I spend most of my time working with people who are experts in their field, but I come from a learning and development background. So I did a marketing degree actually many years ago. I went on to work in retail. My background was working right from when I was 14. I worked for the Mathers family and Sir Robert Mathers. So if you're familiar with the Mathers shoe chain, so Sir Robert Mathers was my very first boss. I grew up working with the family for 15 years. And so really got to learn a lot about personal branding and what it means long before social media even existed. So, and what the power of that really meant. I went on to I worked in government. I was a HR advisor and trainer for Queensland Transport based in Toowoomba, so covered places like Thargomindah and Charleville. So I've done all those places. And my last role was over 10 years ago. I was the head of learning and development for the Super Retail Group. So Super Cheap Auto, BCF, Gold Cross Cycles, Raise Outdoors. Looked after the rollout of training, so online for around 10,000 staff, right through to leadership programs and succession planning and capability building. I started my practice in 2010, started part-time, and it was actually off the back of GFC. So these times are kind of interesting, and as Bill said, there's so many challenges that come with building your brand as an expert in your field, and the shift from being not just knowing stuff, but being known for knowing stuff is really the big shift for you as a learning practitioner. And I think there are really a few things I'm just going to share with them. I'd love for you to jot down which one stands out to you and maybe a challenge for you. The things that I come across the most when I'm working with people to build their brand is the first thing that typically comes up is they're unsure what to say, like unsure how to position themselves, unsure how to, like, how do I talk about myself without sounding like, you know, look at me, look at me. How do I do that without, you know, looking cocky or arrogant? The other thing that comes up is just having the time to market myself. I'm so busy in delivery, or I'm so busy trying to pull together programs, or even being able to put together content, just being able to find the time to sit down and do it. Sorry, I just accidentally muted myself. The other thing that comes up a lot is trying to, because we're having to create content, is how to translate content creation. I quite often find people who are great learning practitioners are quite often good creators and writers, and sometimes writing content, creating content, podcasts, newsletters, blogs, books, but then they go, but I'm still broke. I've got this lumpy revenue that's kind of going, you know, it's going up and down. And so, you know, I'm going from, you know, like from a king to a pauper by the end of each month or each quarter. And I can't seem to get that consistent revenue, or I'm pumping content out and it just doesn't turn into revenue. I'm not getting any cash flow out of it. So I feel like I've got an expensive hobby, is kind of what a lot of people say to me. The other one that comes up is just a fear of adding to the noise, like feeling like I'm just putting stuff out there and, you know, what could I possibly contribute? What else could I possibly to say? The one that comes up the most probably is, as Kerry said, is, you know, as Bill said, you know, if you're positioning yourself, say, in the leadership space, or regardless of what type of expertise you've got, is it can feel like, well, there's so many other leadership practitioners out there. How could I possibly stand out? What is it that makes me different? And what could I have to say that's unique, that's not already said? And then the last one that I find comes up the most is really the imposter syndrome. Is, am I really going to get found out? If I start publishing my stuff, if I start putting myself out there, if I start building my brand, you know, I've been delivering other people's stuff for some time. You know, perhaps it's, you might be certified in, you know, the Myers-Briggs and DISC and, you know, perhaps all these other certifications, and you go, well, I've been delivering other certified programs. I don't know if I've actually got any of my own stuff, and I might have, but I just don't know that it's really that good. I don't know if I could ever be as good as a Myers-Briggs or Isabel Myers and Catherine Briggs or whoever programs might be. So I'm keen to just check in. Which one did you write down? Was it one of those? And just pop it again, pop it in the chat area. So was it the imposter syndrome, fear of adding to the noise, not really sure what to say, time, or maybe it's something else. So feel free. I'd love for you to just pop it in the chat area. And I'm just going to jump over here and have a quick look and see which ones. What do we got? Converting from content to cash. 4, fear of adding to the noise. Finding time. Great. All of the above. Thanks, Leonie. And 4, adding to the noise. Number 2 is time. Number 1, not sure what to say or how to position myself. with the imposter syndrome, not really sure if what I've got is good enough, fear of adding to the noise and converting it to cash. So, and I don't know about you, I find that these are the ones that come up all the time. There's possibly others, but these consistently almost every time that I've worked with someone. But here's what's changed. A few things have really changed. One is that if you look at the change of how business grows years ago, and if you've been around for a while, you might remember these. Who used to do cold calling? If anyone's had to do that in the past, if you've done any business growth type work. And then you've got, for if you're, the other part to it is then qualifying leads and then doing sales demonstrations. So this was kind of, you know, this was really the good old days. This was really, you know, one of those times where you go, it was so easy back then. All we had to do was get the phone book out and we just had to work the phone book. That's all we had to do. It was so good. But today it's all about being able to build your network and knowing. The first question we work with people is, who do you know? We're often working out, well, do you have strong enough networks? Do people actually know you? Do you have you built networks, particularly in your corporate space and corporate career? The second step is for us to build our brand is we need to be able to educate people. And so that's our space, that's our expertise. And the third part is to engage them. And engage them is really about how do you move them from being out in the ether into your world, into your practice, instead of just putting content out on social media or whatever it might be. As part of building your brand, we have to actually get them. It's almost like being on a conveyor belt. How do you get them from out there into your world, into your practice? So I'm curious, I'm just going to stop for a sec, and I'd just love to see a show of hands. Who has their own practice? Like as in they're a contractor, you have, I'm just going to do a scan through. Yep, like, great, just raise your hands. Thanks everyone. Okay, we got lots. All right, awesome. So you know what I'm talking about. So sometimes you're contracting, somebody else is getting the clients for you, and sometimes you're delivering for others. So I contracted for many years before I eventually had all my own clients. But here's what's really interesting that I think you need to know, and there's a big part of building your brand. And that is that there's been some significant shifts that you need to know about right now. So in 2015, $118 billion was spent on content marketing. In 2017, $135 billion was spent. And by 2021, so next year, we expect it to be a $412 billion industry. Now this data was pre-COVID. So what does all this mean, and why should you even care about it? Well, what this means is you've probably noticed that as a result of social media and newsletters and all that sort of stuff, that content's coming out. And even if you're on LinkedIn, who's on LinkedIn? Yeah, great. So who's noticed that you feel like there's more content coming through? Like, you know, you just feel like there's just so much coming through. So the reality is that there is more. In LinkedIn, there's only about 1% of people on LinkedIn actually creating content. But the challenge is that there's a lot more content, there is a lot more being created. However, what this means is that you've got a lot of people who are outsourcing content when we've got this level of demand. So what that means is if people are outsourcing content, if you're outsourcing to offshore or even local, the challenge is that we don't get to hear from you. We don't hear your stories. We don't hear your perspective. We might get a little bit of it, but nobody can do it like you can. And so what I started to notice was when I was working with experts is this was the blocker. This was the bit that they would go, but I don't have time. My challenge is how do I build my brand through being able to communicate my value through content, but I'm not fast. I'm not a quick writer. So what was happening is this type of situation means that you've got a lot of excess noise. You've got a lot of extra people and a lot of noise in the market. So what that means is for those people who are prepared to share their stories and to create really authentic content means that you'll stand out. So a couple of things also to be aware of that I really want you to know about building brands at the moment. Two significant things have happened. Whoops. One is that this was an article, you might not be able to see all the detail on here, but it says rebuilding the economy, gig platforms brace for new demand. So what does this mean? This was an article, this was the Age, and it came out on the 26th of March. And this was an article, was an interview with the founder of Airtasker, Tim Fung. So what we're seeing is, if you're seeing people on platforms like, what do you call it, Upwork and places like that, is, as Bill said, we're now in a global marketplace. So you can position yourself, LinkedIn, whatever it might be. If I need somebody who is an expert in a platform, I now don't even need to go local. I can go global because we're now on this. And you've got people who are now positioning themselves in all industries, even on Airtasker. They've got that challenge to be able to position themselves and stand out. Then equally on top of that is, this is really key to know, is that social isolation has led to a 60% increase in content consumption. So there's a lot of eyeballs on screens at the moment. And you might be thinking, oh, are we talking about content or are we talking about branding? So content is actually the expression of the brand. So what we want to do is, we want to be able to really stand out, but we don't want to add to any noise. It's about creating value so that we can stand out. But really the currency that we're actually working with is trust. Is when we're in difficult times, when we're under stress, under pressure, we really do go to the familiar. We go to those people who we think can help us and who we know who can help us, and that is ideally us. So we've got to really build a bank account of value in our brand so that people will work with us. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to give you 3 big things to help you to build your brand. And then I want to know where you're at. So I'm going to put you into some groups in a minute. There's a couple of comments here. Beck said, Kintel is another interesting one as well. So it's another platform. All right, so let's have a look. 3 big things. The first one, and remember that you're dealing with this currency of trust. Oh, hi there, David. I just saw you there as well. I haven't seen David for ages. All right, here we go. So the first one is, you really got to know your tribe. You got to know who you're looking after. Who do you serve? So this gentleman, I don't know if you've seen this gentleman, his name's Robin Dunbar, and he wrote the book, How Many Friends Does One Person Need? He's done about 4 or 5 TED Talks, or TEDx talks, I should say. He's a social anthropologist, and his question was, why is it that when you look at tribes around the world, so if you look at, tribes in Indigenous communities here in Australia, the Amazon, why is it that some have survived through the tests of time and thousands of years, and yet some of them are still surviving today? And he came up with these metrics, or what are called Dunbar's numbers. So the numbers that he came up with is, he said, well, at the center of a tribe is, you've got to have you as the leader. And when we say you as the leader, if you see these 4 concentric circles, you can take a photo of the screen if you need to. I'll put the numbers up, take a photo at the end, so it's got all the numbers. You've got to see yourself as the leader of the community. And to get that, first of all, is you've got to go, well, who am I serving? Who do I actually help? And at the heart of it, he said, well, the best leaders actually have, and the ones that the tribes that survive, actually have 15 tribal elders, if you like, or advisors around them. So in other words, a sort of board of directors, if you like, for you and your practice and being able to build your brand. My experience has been that this is typically people who have your best interests at heart. So it could be mentors, possibly maybe a previous boss, possibly your partner. It could be family. These are people who are your support crew, if you like, and no clients are in this group, by the way. Only people who are your sounding boards. The next layer out, what we would call 150 friends. The terminology, the family, the friends side of it has come from a gentleman called Matt Church. You may know Matt. Some of you have been in Thought Leaders Business School or know of Matt. So I've been in Thought Leaders Business School I was in there for 7 years, on faculty on 5. But on a break at the moment. But this is also taken from some of Matt's work. And they said that, so Dunbar found that we really only have enough bandwidth for 150 people. So sometimes it's really easy to get caught up, isn't it, in, oh, how many social media followers I've got and all this, and trying to build your brand, a digital brand. But he said, you've only got bandwidth for 150 people. So we have to really focus on the people who we can really serve and take and really focus our attention on. The next layer out, he said, 1,500 fans. Now, actually, Dunbar got to these, the 15,150. But Matt Church asked the question, he said, well, where do you get them from? And created these two extra layers. The one is the 1,500 fans. And we'll say these are people who are on your database or receiving your newsletter. So these people, and ideally every single week. So I love the quote that said, I can't remember who said it, but it said, newsletters are like the Jason Bourne of marketing. They just don't die. I think it's a great quote. And it's so true, is that you've got to build your brand, you actually need to stay connected and communicate that what you know to the people who are your fans. They want to know you. They want to know what you have to say, which is why they haven't unsubscribed. And then the last one are your 15,000. 15,000, this says followers. So these are people who are on your social media, and this can be across all social media. So you might have 5,000 on Twitter, 5,000 on Facebook, 5,000 on LinkedIn. But this is ultimately the number that we're chasing, because this tells us that you've got a practice that's sustainable, and a brand that is sustainable and solid. It also tells us that it typically takes about 3 years, by the way, to build this. So it doesn't happen overnight, but at least to have your goals, and these are the metrics that I work off with clients with building their brand. They have to follow these metrics, otherwise it won't work. And it was Seth Godin, as Sally said, I interviewed him last year, where he said, a tribe has a leader, a message, and a way to communicate. Vanessa said, that's good information to know. It takes 3 years to build the following. Absolutely. So, you know, it's easy to get caught up in the shininess and think, oh, and throw, equally, Vanessa, you're spot on. It's really easy to throw the toys out of the pram with not getting, the numbers within a week. Like, oh, it's not working. And it takes a lot of discipline, and you've got to be really on purpose. This is your life's work. This is what you've been put on the planet to do. So you're spot on. You have, as Beck said, you have to honor the process, and it's continually showing up. What we do know is if you can do this, Sally, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Absolutely. Really easy to get distracted. So you've got to stay focused. And the reason for this is because if you can build this tribe and community and build a brand that's this solid, these people who you're looking after and nurturing, they spend on average nearly 50% more than anybody else. So just to say that again, they spend, and Monique, who's an expert in customer service and customer experience, she knows this, is that these are your top customers. These are the people we've got to look after. These are the people we've got to nurture, because they'll look after us back. It's just how it works. So let me give you a quick example, and then I want to know what you're doing. Quick example is a lady in Sydney. Her name is Rachel Burke. So she has a business called Sales Space. She's an expert in sales, and she said to me, I think I'm not a bad salesperson, but my problem is that I just need more people. If I can just talk to more people, then I can sell to more people, but I just need more people to talk to. She said, I'm a salesperson, I'm not a marketer. So what we did, we put this strategy in place and the things that I'm sharing with you today. And as a result, she increased her revenue that quarter by 66%. So absolutely works. And just consistently getting that content out and being able to convert it into revenue and looking after the people who have bought from you. So what I want to know, I'm just going to ask you, and Bill is going to kindly help me here, is I want you to jump in. Bill's going to put you into a breakout session for a quick session, and I'm going to ask the question, and hopefully you can see it on the screen, is I want to know if you can share in your breakout group on a scale of 1 to 10, how far you are along in building your tribe. 15, 150, 1500, 15,000. So a 0 being, I've got no tribe, never heard of this, no idea. Or 10 being, I am Dunbar's poster child. I should be in every textbook that he's ever written. I'm like the case study of all case studies of Dunbar's work. So, so jump in your group. Bill is going to kindly do that. And I'd love for you, pop your number in there, scale of 1 to 10, and why. What tells you that that might be the case?
Breakout rooms are forming now, so just go ahead and join as you see them.
Thanks, Bill. All right, we're jumping in there now. Okay. Heaps on, which is terrific. All right, great. Who had from, show of hands, who had from 0 to 5? So you had between sort of 0 to like you're kind of underway, but got a fair way to go. Yep, and excellent. And who had sort of 5 to 10? Who's going, yep, I've been at this for a while, I'm chipping away. Yep, nice. Okay, cool. Hey, there's Chris Pop. Hey, nice. Welcome. Great to see you. Haven't seen you for ages.
Hi, Jane.
Yeah, I feel like I'm at a reunion. This is great. All right, terrific. Great to see you again. And all right, okay, so that's the first one. The second one is, so the big thing out of that is, I reckon you want to go away really thinking about, okay, that's my goal. If that's the goal, I've got to work out how am I going to build that tribe, because I want to build a sustainable brand. The second one is you've got to create what I call catalyst content. So we don't, when I spoke with Seth on the podcast, we talked a bit about the type of content that we need to build brands. And he said, yeah, look, the world doesn't need more cat videos. What the world needs is content that actually leads and drives change. And I reckon he's right. And but here's what I reckon is the biggest challenge. And we have got others here who know how to create really great content, like Chris, Monique, Sally, Con, is you would know that the average person, I've shared this before, what we do know is that we have around 48.6 thoughts per minute, which is around 70,000 thoughts per day. That's a lot of thinking. And this means that it's not just about thoughts, but it's about ideas, and it's about solving problems. And Matt Church shares the story about Elizabeth Gilbert, where she says in her book, Big Magic, she wrote Eat, Pray, Love, you might recognize her from there, where she said that ideas are like monkeys, and they kind of come along and jump on your shoulder, and then they jump away. And she said, what you've got to do is grab that monkey by the tail and go, right, I've got to put you down somewhere. Because when you're gone, you're gone. I'm not going to be able to remember it. So a big part of that is really being able to capture your ideas and be present to your ideas. My experience has been with people is when they're not building their brand, it's actually that one of the, I would say the #1 challenge is actually the ideas before the tribe. So they're not present to having really great ideas all the time and being able to capture them. And some of those ideas really include capturing human stories and storytelling. And I mean, we're all L&D practitioners. I don't necessarily need to tell you about why it's so important to put storytelling in your content. You already know this, and you would already know the power of storytelling in your training. And you would, I'm sure you know why. For those who recognize this person, I'm going to ask you to pop in the chat. Who is this person? Just pop it in the chat if you know who this person is. Starts with A. Monique said, hence my writing between 3 and 4 a.m. to capture them. Well, hopefully you'll have, you'll have some tips after today, Monique, hopefully. Good. Beck said, yeah, everybody got it. You got it. You know your stuff. Aristotle. Well done, everyone. So yes, this is Aristotle. So Aristotle said that we really need 3 things to create really persuasive communication. We need data and evidence to support our claims. We need to quote people who our audience admire. And the other part is storytelling. And but capturing the stories is really key. So I thought I'd give you a quick example. Is this lady here? This screen actually doing it this way might be a little bit. We'll give it a go. But this lady, I won't go into all the content, but this was a social media post that she put up. She's one of our clients here in Brisbane. Her name is Tracy Mathers. And she tells this story about something not making sense to her. She was talking to somebody in a business. This was just a few weeks ago with COVID. And essentially what she was saying, she went to see this business and they were closing their doors as she was trying to go and turn up. And then she said, she was talking to them, it was late on a Friday afternoon. And she said, Trace said, are you going on holidays? And they said, no, you know, we're closing because it's so quiet. And she was trying to buy something. And anyway, it was a bit of a rant about what was going on with this experience that she had. Now, if you won't be able to see maybe down the bottom right down there, but it's 97 comments and 107 likes. Now, not that we're necessarily driven by vanity metrics, but what I really encourage people to do is to share stories, is to really be human in your content, and you'll build a really powerful level of authenticity. But the trick is to capture the story when it happens, because you don't always have time to sit down and write a Facebook post at the time. So my tip for you here is, we have some people I know in the community here today that use this tool. This is a tool that I created a few years ago. It's called Memo Mailer and it's free. So it's an app, it's on Google Play and it's on iTunes. And we have a huge amount of speakers and experts using it, but it's really designed, it's like a mental defrag. And if you're capturing ideas, like Monique said, you know, good ideas come along at really bad times. So it's a way that you can just download it onto your phone, but it sends you a memo mailer. And Con, I know, was one of our very first users when we first released it. He's saying it's awesome. I've been using it for a few years now. I remember you being one of the first ones. And so it allows you to get that idea down and it automatically sends you an email just in terms of how you set it up. So I spent 5 years as a productivity consultant, and this tool I created back then because I just really noticed that people were not capturing ideas, and it was like the #1 valuable thing in their careers and their businesses. So if that might help you with capturing the monkey, get that monkey by the tail and get it down somewhere. So this is to capture that monkey by the tail. But what I want to do is, I'd love for you to comment just on the screen. Maybe you use other tools. Memo Mailer is just one that we created. I use it for my own team. So being able to communicate and delegate things. So I put my team's email address in there. So I'd love for you to comment, what tools do you use? Like, it doesn't have to be Memo Mailer, but this is such a great opportunity. I find it sparks a lot of discussion. What other tools are you using? So OneNote or phone on my notepad. Otter. Yeah, Otter's really good. Evernote. Have a notebook wherever I go. Pink Sheets, content pages, good. Trello, voice memo and note in my diary. Great. And Trello again. Dictation on Notes or OneNote and then email it. This will eliminate a step. Beck. Yeah, it's an audio recording. And I actually, when I created it, it was actually for CEOs and EAs when I first developed it, because EAs said to me, I really want to hear how the CEO is saying it. So it was originally developed to speed up communication between EAs and CEOs, but we've found that speakers and coaches and consultants really took it up, and it sort of traveled over into that space anyway. But others, Chris, Evernote, great. Beck's got a dictation on Notes. So terrific. And I don't really mind what people use, but what I would really encourage you to do is be present to your ideas. Just take the time and be conscious and stop and go, I think there's a piece of content in that. Take the time and just get rid of it, but have a home for these things so you can do it. All right, and the last one, and then, because then what you can do is you can start to create content. You can start to create a piece of IP. For some of you, you came to the content creation boot camp that I ran off the back of when COVID first hit. We ran a 2-day content creation boot camp where we created a year's worth of content in 2 days, and we used this process. And as a result, we had overall, in the end, it was 5,500 pieces of content were created across those 2 days. So some of you I've met who came to that. So Monique said, she says it was a life changer, absolutely incredible, couldn't recommend it highly enough. Some of you are in Content Club, where we now meet once a month, and we do that over a couple of hours as well. So if you want more information on that, I'm happy to share that. And we have Catalyst Content book is coming out we get the first copy from the publisher this week. So I'm going to put at the end, if you want me to send you a digital copy of it, I'm happy to send it to you. Because at the end of the day with content, one of my favorite authors is this lady, Anne Handley. She is a New York Times best-selling author. And she says, we don't need more content, we need better content. And I reckon she's right. So we've got, Monique said it changed her thinking on how I push out content in my blog. Yeah, you can be much faster. I think, you know, blogs can take people, you know, hours to create, and you can get these done really quickly. Joanne says that would be helpful. Excellent. All right, so that was number 2. So number 3 now. So we've talked about tools. Now I want to talk about leverage. So my first question to you is, with creating leverage, is I think what you want to do is you really want to be able to create one piece of content and that you can leverage it multiple ways. And there's a reason for that. Is my question to you is, and some of you may know the answer to this if you've worked with me before, I've got a question for you, and I want you to pop your answer in the chat. My question to you is, how much do you think in your world, how much is a piece of content worth in your practice? If I was an accountant, or like, instead of me coming in and doing your P&L or your balance sheet, what would you value a piece of content? Like like content's like assets in your practice. So if I came in and did an assessment of how many pieces of content and valued each one, what do you reckon the average piece of content would be worth? Do you think it'd be worth $500 or $1,000, or how much leverage are you getting out of a piece of content? And I don't know, if you really don't know. That's quite okay. I didn't know either when I started all this. So what would be your guess? And then I'm happy to share. So pop it in the chat, have a bit of a guess. Lots of people going, I'm not sure, I don't know. Okay, great. All right, so what if I told you that if you could create, some people saying depends what people will pay for it, I don't know. Once I have one, Bill has said once I have one, about 5K. Great, because think once used often, you can create so many things out of it. Sally's got 10K plus. Yes, I reckon, Sally, you're right. I think that if you can create a piece of content, and a good solid piece of content, you should be able to generate at least $10,000 worth of revenue out of it. So we typically find that, so for example, I wrote Expert to Influencer, which is this book up behind me, which is this cover. This book was, it was written a book. Every single chapter in it was a piece of content for a blog. It's in a workshop, it's in a diagnostic. We now have licensed practitioners. We have a masterclass, a coaching program, an online course. What else do we have? So it's generated that one piece of content and piece of IP at a high level has generated somewhere, I think we're around the $2.5 million mark. So there's some pieces that will generate a really high amount of revenue, but on average, so coming from Thought Leaders Business School, and some of you are in there right now, the research that they found was if you can create a piece of content that's as leveraged as that, on average, most people will leverage it to the extent that it will generate around $10,000 in revenue. So if you can imagine you're creating a piece of content every week, is something's wrong if there's not enough revenue coming out of that content. So to give you an example, I'll give you another one, and then I'm going to wrap up and take questions. This lady, so this lady's name is Mcqueen. And Sally has also done this as well, which is what she mentioned before. Sally's attended content creation boot camps and written her book in a couple of days. Mcqueen, she's a Melbourne-based business coach. She has written this book, Go Getter, which is Raise Your Mojo, Shift Your Mindset and Thrive. Perfect book for female leaders and entrepreneurs. And so same thing, she created the piece of content, got the pieces done, leveraged them into a book, and now that belongs in, so she has that in a coaching program, a group mastermind, online course, a monthly accountability program, a corporate program, and her book, her blogs. So she's got each piece really working and making the most of as much revenue as she can. So what this means is that you're really taking one piece of content and leveraging it to its potential. So you can see at the top, this is how we take one idea and turn it into we look for about 99 pieces of content. So Bill said, start popping your questions in there. So you can see we've got things like, we turn things into white papers, ebooks, newsletters, Facebook business page posts, Twitter posts, a blog, chapter in a book, a whole book. So there's so many different ways, a podcast, but the idea is to think once and use often. Because I love this quote from Robin Sharma, who says, and I don't know if anyone's doing, is anyone in the 5 a.m. club? Just put your hand up if you're in 5 a.m. club. Some people are, Monique is. You're in 3 a.m. club as well. Wow, you're a machine. But I love this quote where he says, the hours that extraordinary people waste, that ordinary people waste, the extraordinary people leverage. And I think that's super powerful. Vanessa said, my cat's in the 5 a.m. club. I love it. People have probably got kids that are in the 5 a.m. club, I'm sure. But really, if you're going to put the effort into it, you really want to optimize it as much as you can. So I'm going to be mindful of taking questions and make sure I can answer as much as possible. So the 3 big things out of today are really know your tribe, who you're creating for, and who your brand stands for. Who do you serve, and who are you leading? The second one is nurture with catalyst content. So cat videos are fun, but probably not all the time. I've got lots of photos of my dog up, but I'm just mindful of, we've got a new little puppy dog, and Monique's little ones, we've got a bit of a fan base going. We're fans of Monique's kids as well, because they like skateboarding, and I'm teaching my dog skateboarding at the moment. So we're enjoying that journey together, Monique. But nurture with catalyst content that actually inspires and motivates and leads change. You can still bring your personality into your content, absolutely, but it's probably just not all of it. And my third point too is leverage as much as you possibly can. Don't lose time on repurposing, on building everything from scratch all the time. Make the most of every piece of content that you create and optimize it to its potential. So I'm just going to change my screen here, and I am going to pop that. All right. Okay, so I'm going to answer questions, and while I'm answering questions, I'm going to pop this up. So if you want me to send you the copy of the book, so I think we've got the first 3 chapters, at least the digital copy of the book. And there's also a VIP rate if you are interested in Content Club. I've popped that up there as well if you're interested and need some help. So Bill, I'm going to my best to just come to the chat for the questions. Is that what you'd like me to do? Yeah,
I think so. I can read them out for you if you like. We've got one from Donna. If you use something like Hootsuite, what sort of rotation of the same piece of content would you suggest across, say, 3 platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter?
Yeah, that's a good question. So provided it's still relevant, so if the piece of content is still relevant today, even if you wrote that piece of content 3 years ago, so you might put it up when you originally publish it, but if it's still relevant, don't be afraid to repurpose it and republish it. So you might say, all right, well, if I put it on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter on that go, and then you might say, well, in 6 months' time, I'm going to put that piece of content up again, because it's actually all about relevance. So try not to stress too much about, oh, people are going to say, you put this up 6 months ago, you're cheating. You're not, if it's because you're getting new followers and new connections all the time. So I'd really encourage you to look at the content you can repurpose. Maybe you can just take a snippet out of it, maybe create a video out of it. So yes, you can take that piece of content and put it across all 3, though typically, unless it's like, you know, taking photos of your lunch and stuff, that probably stays on Facebook. But if it's catalyst content, for sure.
Good stuff. Yeah, I think that's what I found as well, is that you know, I've written a lot of articles that were in previous times, and one of the things that I'm looking at doing is reposting some of those things, because I went away from some of the creativity and innovation stuff for a couple of years, but the stuff is still relevant as we move forward. So I think that's a good thing. David says, if not getting responses to daily, weekly content, i.e. one response from 1,500, what might be other ways to light the fires?
That's the $1 million question, David. I'm so glad you asked. So this is where you have to really start to look at your data and have a look at the information and the insights that are coming from the content that's going out. So I'll give you an example. I had a quick example. I had a lady who I sent a newsletter out, and because you get to know the people who are on your newsletter list. I had a lady who opened a particular newsletter I sent out once. She'd opened it 27 times. And so this is the power of this information. So, and I knew her, so I rang her, and I didn't say, why did you open my newsletter 27 times? I wasn't going to say that, but I just said, how are you going? You know, because I thought, well, she's opened it 27 times and she's clicked through and looked at this particular program, but she hasn't rung me and she hasn't asked for help. So if you're looking at something 27 times, you probably need some help, but for some reason she's not ringing me. So I need to create some access here and a conversation. And if she doesn't want help, that's fine. I can at least ask and see if she's all right. As a result, we worked out that she just needed some help with pricing a program. It was a $200,000 sale that she was trying to price properly. And so I spent an hour working with her on that. I just said, you don't need to do a whole coaching program. I already know your practice. Why don't we just spend an hour on it? So that was $1,000 for her to get a return of $200,000 for her program. So it was good feedback. So the answer to your question, David, is have a look at your data, read your data. What is it telling you? And be easy to buy from. Reach out, care for people, and just stay connected and see, just reach out and say, how you going? And you'll be surprised what comes out of it.
Yeah, one of the things that I found out of Matt Church's logic of having multiple streams of things, thinking back about 10 years ago, we had a bookstore and we had a public offerings for various workshops and things like that. And we used to say, why do we bother with this stuff?
Yeah.
But then I had a guy who bought a book from us. As a result of that, he was so impressed with the service we got, he asked me to do something else. We ended up working them for over a year, probably $100,000 worth of stuff from having a book. Wasn't even my book, was just a book. But we were just, it was the opening that you needed. So it's that kind of things. Jane, we've got the same question that I was asking you before from Joshua. What hardware software are you using on your desk to blend between your presentation and the wide shot of you?
Yeah, I'm more than happy to share my studio setup kit list if that's helpful, Bill. So I'll put that in the resources area if people want that as well. The short of it is it's a Blackmagic and I've got a Stream Deck. So the Blackmagic is the switcher and the Stream Deck allows me to put these, these pieces up. And we can even have a nightclub.
Be a disco queen.
We do. We turn it into nightclubs. We do all sorts of stuff. But if it's helpful, I'm happy to share that. That's okay.
Well, I think one of the things that many of us have found in this last several months is we learn as much watching the way people present things and the different styles and formats. And the other day on one of our lounges, we had a thing that says, what are some ways not to run a webinar? Because people have had lots of experience from not doing things. So we're getting lots of good stuff like that. From Trevor, how do you ensure your followers see your content on LinkedIn?
Oh, good question. Around the research tells us that around 40% of people on 40% of people are on LinkedIn every day, and the average person is on for about 17 minutes per day. So the challenge is that's kind of hope becomes a bit of a strategy, doesn't it? And hope we don't want hope to be your strategy. So the question I would have is your content really targeted enough that you could send it directly to any of those people? So publish it. But I would encourage you, first of all, to think about if it's something specific for specific people in that audience, is perhaps reach out and say, hey, I don't know if it's helpful, but I just wrote this article. I noticed that you're doing this. Here's the link. And so that's one, because we don't get near the readership that we used to. The algorithm changed a few years ago. But the second thing would be is put it as an update. So take some content out of it, put it up as an update and a link. Then there's a lot more people who read content that comes through an update. But my encouragement to you is the real question is how do you get the people on LinkedIn onto your newsletter? And if you can do that, you've got opt-ins, webcasts, all sorts of stuff, but that's really the key and where you've got control, because at the end of the day, you don't own LinkedIn, but if you can get them on your newsletter. And if you read Expert to Influencer, it's got all the skills in it. You can go to my website, you can download the book for free. You don't even need to opt in. And it's got the diagnostic and it'll tell you how to get all those opt-ins. So yeah, that's the real question, because then you've got control.
I would also point people to the ILP website, where Julie Mason a couple of months ago did a 3-hour masterclass for us on selling through LinkedIn and things like that. And she's a salesperson, and she says, here's how you use LinkedIn to sell. So some really good stuff in there as well.
Nice.
What's on here? I got something from Beck. For the bigger projects, is there any stigma around publishing via publishing house versus self-publishing, or are both able to leverage equally effectively?
Nice question, Beck. So short way of answering it is you can definitely still sell big programs off your own self-published books. So you don't necessarily have to go with a publishing house. It typically comes back to a bit of positioning and really what you're trying to do in your practice. So we've got people in our clients in our community who have sold multiple, like we're talking $600,000 programs off a self-published book that's 25,000 words. We've got others that are doing, we've got Wiley published authors in our community and best-selling Wiley authors in our community, and they will sell programs that are less than that. So it really comes back to working out what is the average price, or what's the average revenue level that you're trying to get in from a sale. So let's say, for example, if your average, let's say your average sale is $100,000 that you're chasing, and so it's a cultural transformation 12-month program or something like that, then you go, okay, well, what's the book that solves that problem, and where's the customer that needs that? So do I really, if you've got lists, you've got database, sometimes you actually don't need to go to a big publishing house, but sometimes you do. I find it actually more so comes back to how solid people's databases and tribes are. If they're solid, more often than not, they actually don't need it, but sometimes they'll do it to help build the tribe. So plenty that do, plenty that don't. It's really just, you really got to have a good look at it for your own practice. But happy to jump on I do one-on-one coaching sessions that just for an hour and work it out. So happy to look at that if that's helpful.
Yeah, that's good. Rachel adds to that question that she likes the self-publishing side of things because it makes more money for you, but you really need to have the CBA to be able to sell it. And that's part of it. Exactly.
Spot on, Rachel. Yeah, all mine are self-published for that reason. I like the control over the IP. I do my own marketing. If you go through a publishing house, you really want to have 50 grand in your bank account ready to go. You've got to buy a lot of books, and you've got to pay for a lot of marketing, PR, all that sort of stuff. So just have your bank account nice and full, ready to go.
Con I'll finish with one last question, but Con just asked if it's okay to tag certain influencers on your posts to get traction. What I found, Con, is I ask for permission from people. So I sort of sit back, listen, is it okay if I could tag you on the odd thing that I put out for ILP, and I try not to overdo it? What's your feeling, Jane?
Yeah, I think that's nice and courteous, Bill. And I think on the odd occasions, like there might be someone that you feel like you know, and you say, or even sending them a message behind the scenes just to say, I hope it's okay, I've just tagged you in this. If not, just let me know. And I just think it's courteous, because to save you time and going back. And yeah, I think that's right, Bill. I agree. Good question, Con.
All right, I might ask the one final question, and it's something that I think many of us are going through at the moment. But, I've been in this game for almost 30 years. And as you go through it, you change and you develop your focus areas, your passions start to change in little ways. And I was sitting in a session the other day where it was a little bit about branding as well. And the question is what about rebranding, where you sit back and say, I've been known as that,
Yes.
Now I want to be known as this.
Yes.
And how you change that. And there was some good hints and tips we got about, you know, what does your LinkedIn profile say? What is you doing here? But it was really interesting because the fellow had the co-host actually say, just Google yourself and see what comes up. And it was quite an amazing experience to see that is what, when people Google you, are they seeing what they want, what you want them to see?
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and it can also really, again, come back to tribe. So one of the things I often get people come to me with rebranding as a result of mistakes from rebrands as well. So because they've gone, because it's been done too intuitively, they haven't used their numbers. So they haven't got, I go, well, get the list out. Okay, well, you've got 50 people who are CEOs in financial services. If we're going to rebrand, then they're the people who already know how to buy you. The data tells us they'll spend 50% more than anybody else. What did they understand about you? But the intersection of they understand and you want to be. And if you can get that right, is otherwise repositioning is a bit accelerator clutch. Like you've got to sometimes be prepared to let go, which means a drop in revenue sometimes. So you have to be very careful. But in the long term, it's really valuable. So typically, if we're going to do a rebrand, more often than not, it's a leveling up of the brand for most experts at around the 500K in revenue. So if you're trying to work out when do you do something like that, I would say 90% of the time is when I see it is then.
That's great. Thank you for that.
My pleasure.
I'm going to go into gallery view at this moment. And what I'd really like to do is ask if everybody's okay if I take a screenshot of the two screens of people that we've got here so we can actually share that with each other and online, if that's all right with people. If you'd rather not have it a shot, then that's okay. Just we can do it. Con is hiding his face. Thank you, Con. That's really, we appreciate that. But and then I'll just ask Carrie to do the final thanks to Jane and things like that. But if everybody's okay, put up thumbs up or smile or do whatever you want to do, and I'm going to take the screenshot now. Yay. Thank you. Thank you. I've got a second screen, which is almost as full as the first one. So again, thumbs up from everybody that's there, and I'll get the second screenshot. Beautiful. Thank you. Carrie, over to you for a few seconds. Remember what we're going to be doing when Jane is finished with now that we're finished the main presentation. And thank you for that, Jane. It was fantastic. Is for everybody that wants to stay on, I'd like to take you through a little bit about what we're doing with the capability framework and talking about business smarts. I'll just introduce a few things and then we can have a bit of a discussion. So hopefully if you want to hang around for that, that'd be terrific. In the meantime, we'll be putting this recording together and sending it out to everybody anyway. So, Carrie.
All right, thanks, Bill. Jane, thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wonderful tips on branding. I'm not surprised, Sally was right. It was full of gems, and I've taken lots of notes, so I'm sure everybody else on the session did as well. I want to say thank you, welcome to the ILP tribe. We're now sort of bringing you into our family. But also really love the parts talking about leveraging the content that we're putting out there and how and when we do that. So really enjoyed it. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you everybody on the session today for your conversations in the chat and participation in the breakout rooms. And I'll hand back over to Bill, but thank you, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, Bill.
Thank you very much. All right, what I'd like to do now is, as I said to you, we want to talk a little bit about the capability framework. So I thought what I'd do is share my screen with you. So for those of you that haven't seen this before, this is the ILP website. You can see the logo or the URL up here. The capability framework is something we introduced earlier this year on how we can actually develop the learning and development professional of the future. And I wanted to point you to this page here because on this page where it says capability framework, you can actually hover over each of these attributes to start to explore which ones are on. So if you clicked over professional attributes, it'll bring us over here, and then you'll start to see 3 capabilities. Under each attribute, there's 3 capabilities. And so under each capability, there is a 3 behaviors that we're looking at. So for value diversity, there's these behaviors, continual development, these behaviors, and emotional intelligence and these behaviors. So if we turn back to that, one of the ones that I wanted to look at today was on business smarts. Because I think what's happening right now is that a lot of us have been in the game and we haven't had the business side of things as much as we might have wanted to. And so I think one of the great capabilities is this business smarts idea. And there are 3 capabilities underneath it. One was courageous consulting. And this is about it's a bit about values and ethics, I think, and Carrie can come in and talk a bit more about it, and so could Joshua if he's still there. That provides frank and honest feedback to stakeholders in regard to learning needs and solutions. It's in the case of not just doing what they ask necessarily, but actually being frank, here's what I think would work better, etc. Shows initiative and works through challenging issues and offers professional opinion to achieve successful outcomes, and gains the trust of others by providing information and advice in a professional and credible manner. Now, the way that the process works is that you can have a degree of skill and capability in each of these behaviors, and that's what the capability framework assessment is all about, which I encourage everybody to actually go ahead and have a look at. But what I thought I might do is just throw it back open to people now, and maybe take a screenshot of this if you like, or go to it on another terminal. But I don't know, Carrie, can you speak to courageous consulting? And Joshua, if you're still there, could you speak to it as well? And I will stop sharing the screen at this stage.
Yeah, sure. And it was interesting. Courageous consulting was the one thing that just came up time and time again, and we were quite surprised at it. But people are getting more challenged with the expectations from their stakeholders. So it might be they want training delivered in less time, they want it blended, they want it to halve the budget but still do the same amount of training. So, and it was really wanting to get a seat at the table. So it's like, how do they do that? How do they get that credibility to be able to talk to the stakeholders and get them to buy in with the value that they're providing? So yeah, so it was sort of really interesting that we sort of focused on that. As I said, the role of a learning and development professional is getting a lot more holistic. It's not just design or delivery or delivery, but it's really about the profession and consulting, the marketing, and also on that list that Bill showed you was finance. So it's, you know, how do I put dollars to the value that I'm providing to the organization? How do I know the break even? So it's really, you know, knowing how, you know, what impact you're making to that organizations and be able to consult with them on that. So, yeah.
Joshua here. I've just got a bandwidth issue, so you can only see the 8. You can't see my face, which, you know, might be a blessing for those that know me. To back up what Kerry just said there with courageous consulting, when we were putting this together, we were getting a lot of feedback, and you heard Kerry use the words wanting a seat at the table. And the feedback we were getting from a lot of members, a lot of professionals in this space was that, how do I get that seat at the table? How can I be a contributor? How can I shape the direction of L&D within this organization? And a lot of people were getting caught up in, I don't think there's any other way I can put it other than desperation and needing to be accepted and needing to be there. So as L&D professionals, quite a lot of people were telling us that they're always saying yes to these last minute requests. And, you know, when there's been, if you've ever worked for a large organization and there's an incident, and then they do a taproot investigation, it always comes down to a training need or a learning need or a leadership need. Well, courageous consulting was also born out of the space of, can you constructively sit there with your client, whether you're a, you know, independent operator or if you're an internal, can you sit there with your stakeholders and say, no, that's not the best solution for us right now, and have the courage to actually expand that out and ask, why do you think we need this? Or is this the best approach for us to take? And that takes a lot of guts. It takes a lot of ethics to do it as well. But it actually came to the forefront in all the research that we did on that capability model there, Bill, that the courage to be able to have a robust discussion and actually focus in on the true need, not just the quick, you know, fly away want that we have. So I need to couch that and put an asterisk as courageous consulting is not just about saying no all the time, but it's about having the courage to have those deep, robust discussions about what the actual need is.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I go back and share my screen again. Courageous consulting is what we've just been talking about. Marketing and communications is a second part of this thing, and this is the ability to present and convey the information, monitors their needs and changing needs, I would guess, and contributes and monitors to the development of tactical marketing campaigns. I think a lot of people are working in that space, and we're learning more and more about it. Again, Joshua, Carrie, do you have anything you'd like to comment on this one?
Yeah, just a quick one to jump in there, Bill. A lot of the feedback that we had from members, from people that we surveyed, people worldwide that we were working with, saw themselves as great at developing others. But, much to what we've heard today with Jane, Jane's got a background in marketing, but a lot of L&D professionals said that they weren't good marketers. And the reason that marketing and communications came into these capabilities and these behaviors is that we do need to internally market what is available, why we are doing some sort of learning campaign, or why we are developing our leaders or our teams. So, you can see those behaviors there. To be able to present that information in a way that people are going to resonate with, to actually be attuned to stakeholders and what their current needs are, or even better, what their emerging needs are. And to be able to, as we said, have tactical marketing campaigns around the learning solutions. So this gets beyond pitching a circus tent and just running a training event or having a speaker. It's everything that goes with it. And Jane spoke to that with all the other collateral that could go with that piece of learning. This became a really critical part that a lot of L&D people put their hand up and said, hey, I'm not real good at this. I need to develop here.
Yeah.
We sort of find that, most learning and development professionals are givers or they're helpers, and they want to sort of add that value to people, but they find it really difficult to sort of, if they're sort of, trying to win some work, saying, pick me, I'm the best. And they really struggle with that. So it's sort of like, not seeing it as selling it, but it's sort of, it's providing that value to help that organization. But it's also, with the marketing, it's a leveraging. So what are the things, like what Jane was sort of saying, what are the things that you're getting that might be testimonials that you can leverage to promote future courses? So, we're quite often, not just hopefully not just the happy sheet, but there's other, in-depth feedback that you get that you can actually use for marketing to show future potential clients, the value that you're adding through your programs.
And Kerry just dropped a gem there. For those that are internal, that are, run L&D within an internal organisation, I'm not even going to ask you to put your hands up because I'm not even on video, but how many people actually get testimonials internally within an organisation and share them to show the value and the benefit of that learning initiative that's just happened? Probably not very many, because it's just been seen as a function. Well, that's where we've put this into the capability framework and behaviours that the world's leading learning professionals do. They share the value of that through, whether it be testimonials or other, what we'll call assets or content that can be marketed internally.
Yes, it's like building your tribe inside the organization as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
Absolutely. The third capability that we had here, and Carrie mentioned it before, was the finance and budgeting. And this is something maybe Malcolm could help us all with at some stage. But this is being budget savvy. This is about running a business kind of thing, and you need to be able to put that together. So the commercial acumen through the planning, the processes of doing that, monitoring the cost benefit of things. So how are we actually making money on things? Is it where we lost leaders, and how are we working with those things? And communicates and monitor the commercial aspects of projects. And this is where some things might be worth something to begin with and then drop away a little bit later, things like that. Carrie, Joshua, do you have anything you'd like to comment on this one?
With perhaps some war wounds and bruises from sitting in executive board meetings with CFOs grilling us on why do we have all this lost productivity time, pulling people away to do training courses and fancy coaching, and well, the ability to be able to speak in their language, to meet them with the numbers, but to also help, whether it be a client or an internal stakeholder, a department head, to actually see how this learning initiative and this solution translates to numbers. And it's quite funny because we all deal with people. as learning professionals, and most of us will be people, not numbers people, but that commercial ability to translate it into numbers that they understand quite often gets you better buy-in, more sustainable budget, or just the support and the understanding of why are we doing this, and helps you to build a business case. So this one really is, have you got that capacity to be able to talk those numbers and build it into a business case that shows the true value, not just, I suppose, the implicit and the explicit value. Kerry, you got any other thoughts on that?
The only thing I've got to add, it's one of those things. Then, you know, I've been in the industry for 20 odd years, more, probably 30 plus years, I don't want to count, but it's always been a big issue with you when you're doing your learning and development budget, that trying to justify it for the next year, because, you know, it's struggled to show the impact of the training. So this sort of fits in hand with our evaluation dimension, but it's really sort of going through and monitoring that impact, you know, following up, you know, for the individual, their team, the, you know, and the organization. So what was spent on the training, what can you measure that was actually relevant to the training, not just what improved overall, but what can you generally connect back to the training influencing back into the workplace. So it's really important us going forward, because it's going to get more competitive out there, that, you know, we can work out through our programs exactly what the cost is of the program and what the cost of the impact is and the outcome for the organization. So
Bill, if I could just jump off the back of what Kerry said there, a lot of L&D departments we found were had this perception, or were seen as a cost center, as a function. And if I go back and emphasize those words, cost center, where they cost the business. Well, in terms of what Kerry said there, when you're doing up your budget, it's not, can I recover this much amount for the budget for next year? What if the L&D department or that division was able to show how they contribute to the profitability, to the gain of the organization? And I'm going to be naughty for just a second. When we do start to launch the Certified Learning Organization, you'll see how we actually measure that in terms of performance within an organization. So if I pull it back to us as professionals here, can you translate what you're doing in learning to the value that the organization produces, rather than being seen as a cost center and a function?
Yeah, thanks, Joshua. And again, we got some exciting things building around the capability framework, and it's a great piece of work for us to build on. Again, I just point out to people, if you go to this page and you just hover over any of these, you can learn about them and see the depth. The other thing I want to suggest to you is go over here and take the assessment. This links you to the skills logic capability assessment process, and there's some pretty simple instructions there. Go ahead and do that. It gives you a nice report that you'll be able to work from and start to have a look at that. So we're just about finished. Before I do that, I just want to talk a little bit about some of the upcoming events we've got. As you know, we have our, this is the one we've just had today, which was fantastic. Friday, for those who are interested, we have our members lounge. This is from 10 o'clock to 11 o'clock, and we just have shoot the breeze, but at the same time we put in, very much like Lyndall Box does here in Geelong, we put up the topics that people might want to speak about into the whiteboard, then vote on those, and then to design the discussion around that. It was an idea that I stole from Lyndall. The other thing we've got is coming up in 2 weeks from now, is we've got a very interesting process here called Under the Hood, an introduction to the brain and neuroscience. And Steve Marriott is in the UK, and he came to the attention of one of our members, Beck Sharp, who talked a little bit about how excited she was by what he was looking at. So Beck, are you there? If you are, would you like to just talk a little bit about what your experience was with Stephen?
Yeah, sure. So I worked with Steve way back when in the UK, and just someone that I've maintained connection with. He's written a couple of books around behavioral change and transformational change, and he's got some he's running a 4-part series at the moment and the first part is behavior in the brain, and he is bringing, well, a good portion of that to our members as well. And it's all about the neuroscience of learning. He really talks about the fact that when we tend to talk about the brain in learning, it's sort of that very shallow top level of knowledge around the brain. So he's going to deep dive as much as he can in a short time. And also it's quite an early morning for him as well. But we're going to go back to basics, no PowerPoint, there'll be flip charts behind him. And yeah, we're going to get to a really good understanding of how neuroscience and yeah, the brain itself shapes the learning experience.
Fantastic. And Carrie and I are always excited when some of our members get excited about something they see and suggest to us that this is somebody we should have on board. That's what happened with Jane, that's happened with Julie. Almost everybody that we've had on board has been coming from that kind of process. So if anybody has anybody that they think they could put forward that they think all of our members would benefit from, please let me and Carrie know. Or if you think you've got something that you really want to add value to our members and you want to step up and host or facilitate a session, things like that, then please let me know and we'll start to schedule it. We have the next 2 weeks scheduled, but then after that, we're still pretty clear. So I'm interested to hear from people about what it is that they would really like to hear. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. We have just a couple of more minutes. So I'm going to throw it open. Does anybody have any comments, questions, or bad jokes that they'd like to share with us? How did you find that going through that that process of having a quick look at the capability framework? Was that okay? Just enough time to do it? Good, 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 good. All right.
Bill, the only question I've got, I suppose, with this capability framework is there's quite a few around, as we know. AITD's got one, ATD in the US has got one, ILP's got one. How does someone, how do we penetrate for people to be able to have a look at the ILP one and value it and make it as a torch, I suppose, for the rest of the profession to follow?
It's a good question. Joshua, do you want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. I'll ad lib now. Yeah, Con, you're right. We have done work with some of the other associations. We've done some collaborations with them. We've even done some mapping between what the ILP has put together and what they have. I think the first one that stands out is that, as you see with the name change, the focus is on Asia Pacific. So with a focus on Australia, New Zealand, and Asia, being that greater Asia Pacific, the data, the research, and the behaviours, the capabilities that have gone into this one are specific for this region. That has been acknowledged overseas as well, where we've been working with partner organisations or associations and recognising the differences, but also they've even said, wow, it's great that you're not looking to change yours because you've done the research in your area. So regional would be my first response. The second one is the practicality. If you look across the different capability type models, you can start to see an influence or a direction that they may go, whether they're more marketing savvy or they're more this. The one thing with the ILP one is that it is more central. And it will focus out on multiple areas, but and Bill and Kerry are probably going to slap me for this because I know we're meant to be focusing on it, but what's coming around the corner, and I'm not doing any marketing spiel there or sales spiel, is the links to the Certified Learning Organisation are embedded. So that would be the second. And the third point is the direct relationship to the certifications that we have now, Con, with particularly the Certified Learning Facilitator, Learning Designer, the Certified Learning Consultant. Oops, did I let that one slip? But that's coming soon. Certified Learning Solutions. So yes, I'm going to have a bias, I'll own that, but I think the top three answers there would be the region specific, the fact that there's a practical nature to it, and the links to what is coming shortly with certified learning organisations and the existing certified learning certifications we have. Kerry, is there anything else you could add to that?
You just muted yourself, Kerry.
mute. I was on mute and I unmuted again. Sorry, thanks. No, I just think it's appreciating, like it was really good working with some of the other associations and appreciating what they've done. And I think given that we've sort of done so much research with people throughout Australia and New Zealand with what capabilities they believe they need now and for the future, that it really is specific to our region, as Joshua said. So, and given that, you know, we're sort of having a look at sort of some ideas of, as Joshua said, mapping across, so the potential down the track is having global recognition, so that, you know, we're Asia Pacific, some of the other ones are in other parts of the world, but combining, but also appreciating the differences are relevant for that particular area.
And just to contradict myself, it's also worth noting, I don't know, Kerry, if I can let this out, but I think it's being recorded anyway. So although the research was undertaken in this region, and some of you who are on the call still and who were on earlier were part of some of those sessions where we actually broke this down and we went out to members and people in the industry and said, well, what do you think? What do you need? Where also this capability model is also getting picked up in some of the other regions now anyway. Americas, UK, Europe, where they're starting to use what we've got and saying, we can see the practical nature of this and we can see the transferability, and it goes down directly down to behaviours. Again, I'll own my bias, but knowing that it is getting picked up in other regions, and we were region specific initially, tells us that we've actually got quite a good balance. On the marketing side, Con, if we bring that all of that back into how do we get this as the foremost and the prominent capability model, there's greater minds than me on this call here that could probably help us steer it. I think if we can give you the context of how we got to it, then maybe we can all work together to push it out in the front.
And we've got the expert Jane here, so she might as well help us do it too.
Can I just, I completely interpreted Con's question differently and thought that it was about what's the ROI basically of doing this. And so wouldn't that be exactly what we said before? It's getting those metrics from those who've been through it and been out, like those internal testimonials. So that's how did I miss that? Like I completely...
No, you're right, Sally. It was both. It was both, Sally. You're right. It's exactly what I was looking for. Is getting some, getting some input from those who've been through it and have actually applied it and used it, but also how do we distinguish and differentiate ourselves using marketing terms, the USP. What's our USP in relation to the competency framework that the ILP so the Asia Pacific ILP has developed. I think for me, once we've now nailed it, I think we now have an obligation, all of us as members or even as advocates of ILP, to go out there and talk about it as being a regional specific or unique to our region, and the research behind it is very much unique to our region and the data behind it is based on that. And that will make it, I think, more attractive to a lot more people. I'd love to hear others' thoughts.
Yeah, and it will keep evolving. There's a few things that I want to sort of, you know, since we actually developed the capability that I now want to add in, like a little bit more on data analysis, a little about like making sure analysing learning needs. So there's a bit in there, but I just want to go a deeper dive. But this all started when, and it's been, as many people know, my bugbear, that the Certificate for in Training and Assessment has become the industry standard or the benchmark within the within the industry. I've worked in large organisations. I've worked for AIM as their education manager. A lot of L&D professionals get their Cert 4, and that's their ticket to become a general practitioner and be able to deliver anything they want. So we're about, you know, trying to get people, what's your area of expertise, focus on that as, you know, and your in-depth knowledge, but as well as develop your learning and development professional skills. And this is sort of a way of sort of saying, where am I at now? We recently did it with a large government organisation, and they didn't know what they didn't know. They thought they were going to go through in flying colours. Complete shock that, hey, they only got about 40% of what an L&D professional should have. So, and it will vary depending on which organisation you're in or which industry you're in. But we really want to say, hey, this is the new standard. If you want to be successful, this is where you need to be, and ILP is going to be right behind you, supporting you to be successful. And
that's the stories we've got to tell. That's what Sally is saying. That's the stories we've got to tell.
Kerry, it's time to wrap up. I'll turn it over to you to wrap us up.
Oh, oops, unmute. Sorry.
You're muted. You're muted.
pressing. I've got a delay, so I'm sort of going mute and then that's sort of coming up. So thanks, Sally. You can be my mute police. Everyone, thanks for today for all of your input and feedback in regards to the capability framework, because this is really our passion and where we will be focusing on going forward. So I look forward. Bill is going to try, or sorry, is going to keep sort of finding some real gem masterclasses that will help us build up those skills within the capability framework. But and you know, thank you for being part of our tribe. It's my new word now. So and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jane.
And thank you, Jane. Yes, thank you.
Thanks, Jane, again. It was a great
Bye.
session.
See you all. Hopefully see you Friday.
All right. See you then.